Well, good morning, everybody. Our last 7 days has got me asking big questions about where the next few weeks are going to be going, because as we look at the pattern as it stands here, we've been able to get systems that have rolled through the west. Sometimes they come up pretty far north through the mountains. Sometimes they've dug through California and ejected. But the reality is that we've seen more often than not southwest flow. And if you're in spring and the jet stream is coming out of the southwest and rolling toward the northeast or rolling toward Ontario or Quebec or the Canadian Maritimes, then the setup is ideal for pulling Gulf moisture. And this is what we've seen. And I can't count the number of videos that have been through my Twitter feed as an example of people driving into floodwaters and just flooded out towns and roadways and creeks and rivers and everything. And it's just a quick look back here to suggest that the forecast models which have honed in on this area have done quite well. Now, the questions I have for May, and this is the big idea for the longer range forecast, which we're going to scratch at the end of this, is does persistence win the day and the pattern we've been in return, or does this mid-May break really occur? So that would be about 10 days from now. And if it does occur, then this entire precipitation pattern vanishes. So we need to know. Now, we could pick apart any specific spot in the country, but if we just look at it on the whole, this is what the last 2 weeks have done in terms of percent of normal. So this is through yesterday morning, looking at the percent of normal precipitation. And where some of the major flooding events have been, kind of right in through this corridor, just take note of this large area in Texas, which is in my deepest shade here, representing 8 to 10 times normal precipitation over that 2-week time period. We've had some sea breeze showers that have come up in parts of the Carolinas, but farther north you go into the mid-Atlantic, we've had dry conditions, and we need to see if the moisture is going to be able to get to that region. The other developing stories are about the hardwood and wheat belt that's right into this part of Kansas. How far back to the west does the dry line retreat? Where are the next rounds of severe storms going to be? And are we going to fill in some of the precipitation holes in Montana and Wyoming and the Columbia Basin as we go forward? Now, we don't focus a lot on California. Anything wet at this point in the year, California typically is we would kind of think of that more of a negative signal. We need to be accumulating heat in the west early in the season, and we need to also be understanding when the precipitation events come, simply due to the way that water's managed in the west. But with this, I'm going to give you a couple more perspectives on recent precipitation by going to the latest drought monitor. We're now down to about 17% of the total land area in the lower 48 in some form of D1 to D4 drought. So that does not include this shade of color. And it's just a reminder, I know a lot of folks over here in North Carolina, getting up to Virginia, have been so very dry for the last couple of weeks. This is a cumulative long-term statistic. So there's like 6 months of data that are being used to understand the drought scenario. And that's why you're just currently in the abnormally dry region. But that has expanded. Just in the last 2 weeks alone, we've seen that abnormally dry area grow. And we have a 1-class degradation here, also in this part of Kansas, part of Montana. Here, a couple of areas I think it's going to be improving in coastal Washington, Oregon, and Montana. And we'll have to wait to see how much moisture we can get back into parts of Kansas, central Kansas. But take note, Missouri, Iowa, there's big sections here of the mid part of the country that have seen some pretty significant drought recovery. And if we could look at our latest 100 centimeter or 40-inch soil moisture values, you look at this and go, where did that fall drought that lasted all winter in our soil go? And this is what some of these recent rains have done. But it is key to see these regions that continue to show up with dry conditions. But I think you're going to see a lot of change in some of those regions as we get through this near-term forecast. So here's the big picture idea. Over the next 10 days, we've seen both the GFS and the European model, also the MBM. We've seen the WPC. We've also seen the artificial intelligence forecasting system find this pattern. I'm watching 2 large systems come through. You can actually almost see them curling up, right? You got these 2 ideas right in through here, plus the way that the precipitation's entering the northwest. And I think that over the next 10 days, it will be key to watch how the flooding threat increases here and how dry we do end up getting and how quickly we end up getting dry into these areas that have been absolutely soaked, and what does the severe weather look like out of this. Now, I've talked a bit about recent precipitation, but I don't want to ignore what fell in the last 72 hours, and this is through last night, but looking at total accumulated snow just in the last 3 days. I mean, Montana coming into the Rocky Mountains, part of the Cascades, interior, like the Blue Mountains here in Oregon, have picked up more snow, and we've got I think more snow in the forecast package as we look forward, because the latest European model forecast for the western United States over the next 10 days is really beginning to show evidence of quite a bit of snow that could add up in parts of the Cascades, Sierra Nevada, the interior mountains here of the West. And we need to see the timing of this and how much it is and what kind of cold air is delivered along with it, because that has been our risk going forward, as how the West goes back into a colder pattern overall. So then, while that's happening, though, if you dip cold air this time of year into this region, the likelihood of not having it here is pretty high. And that's why we continue to see sometime around, the 9th, 10th, and 11th, the risk of excessive heat early in the season. So these would be temperatures this time of year that are deep into the 90s. That's what we're on the lookout for. So the other question, I mentioned, is persistence going to win? What I would like to know is how much longer do we continue to see powerful storms like these erupt here? These were tornado producers. These were hail producers, straight line wind damage. It's all following that interesting boundary, of course, between the Gulf moisture air and the dry air coming out of the southwest. We call it, of course, the dry line, and how each system that comes out interacts with that. Because if you just look at yesterday's storms here in parts of Texas, just to focus in on these, we had storms elsewhere, but these were such powerful and tall storms. These were producing tornadoes. They were producing hail. And today is May the 3rd. And for most of us in meteorology, we've all been trained to know about May 3rd and the risk that this early May type pattern can have, given the Moore, Oklahoma tornado of 1999, which is the record setter. So just thinking about this is what was just added, almost another 100 reports just yesterday, including 12 tornado reports. Like I said, we did have these stronger storms farther to the north, as you can see here as well. So where do we stand? We are now above our historical trend on tornadoes as of May the 3rd, as of May the 1st. Average will be 513. We're at 552. So just to show you that. Interestingly enough, despite all the hail, we're still off by about 200 reports compared to the historical averages, but we're certainly following this trend up. And just take note that our hail risk stays elevated climatologically until we get into the month of July. That's when things start to pull back a little bit. You can still see the peak of the distribution is ahead of us here in May and June. And finally, for wind reports, this is when we've been tracking above normal by about 200 to 250 reports now for a while. And we're going to continue to see the risk of these stronger winds as we press forward in this forecast. So radar, early this morning, this is an 18-hour animation. So as we get to the very end of it, we're going to get a good look at where the storms are just early this morning as one system starts to clear east. And we can see some pretty potent storms. Let me just pause this and take you right to the very end. Take a look at the squall line that's moving through parts of Arkansas. Look at eastern Texas getting more rain, scattered precipitation throughout much here, the eastern Corn Belt to the Great Lakes, and then the strong inversion behind it giving us a lot of ground clutter in this area. Our lightning this morning, those storms that are coming through Arkansas, potent, but also out of Texas and Louisiana. And some of the storms here are decaying a little bit this morning, but we still have some thunder rumbling in this area. All right, all hazards weather map. This next low that's coming into the west is a powerful one. We've got widespread wind advisories and wind watches, high wind watches here. Winter storm advisories have been posted for parts of California and Oregon's mountain system. We're still dealing here with the frost freeze issues that are coming out of the eastern side of the Snake River Valley and the flooding. That's what we're really spending a lot of time talking about here with early morning fogs as well. But there it is. We've been talking about this all week. That is the trough that we'll be digging over the weekend and ejecting next week. And the Storm Prediction Center has continued to take its, forecasts and kind of pump them up the day of the events to kind of give us a better look at where the severe risk is. And so today it's going to be in parts of Kansas and Nebraska, coming out of Colorado and also back down into Texas. And you can see by each of these where that dry line is likely going to set up. It's back farther to the west. So as this next system rolls through, we get into the May the 4th. We're going to be watching on Saturday for stronger storms to stretch up through this region. And just remember something. Yesterday in Joplin, I don't know if you saw that when I flipped over to it, but we did have a tornado report. They just started to, they just updated the data. They sometimes do this right about the time I'm recording. But anyway, there was a reported tornado in Joplin, Missouri, and that was under marginal risk. So even though we show this large area of marginal, understand that there is still risk for severe storms. But that's Saturday, and here's what things look like Sunday. Now on Sunday, that is the day we're going to be watching the trough start to eject, which is why next week on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we have 3 days already showing up in the day 4, day 5, and day 6 risk areas here that there will be severe storms. Again, this is Monday, getting into Tuesday and Wednesday. And we're going to have a close look at what each of these systems is going to do here in a moment. But first, this is where we stand early this morning. So we've already seen this on the radar. Let's pick it up with the forecast. Snow coming out of Wyoming could clip parts of South Dakota and Nebraska. As you watch this system kind of break apart east, it's all attached to this big low that's off the top of the high-res NAMS kind of field of view here. We're going to be paying attention tonight to the potential for a large line, possibly a squall line of thunderstorms to rip through, this part of Nebraska and Kansas. Now, our big questions are, does that squall line really exist? And will it make it punch through what has been this area that's been so dry? So this is the overnight risk. And I'll be honest with you, I was talking with my colleague Matt Reardon. There was a project a number of years ago run based out of the University of Illinois, but several universities were a part of it. It was called Pecan. Now, I know many of you listening to this will not like the way I said that, but the name of it was made up in Illinois, and that's how they say it there. And what it studied was these nocturnal squall line events, derechos. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be a derecho, but that's what the point of the project was. And it's where we end up getting these squall lines of storms, which evolve in the overnight hours, riding on top of the surface boundary layer. And what we were just discussing is the atmosphere in the middle part of the country at risk of this on Friday into Saturday. And so I would just like to make the point that tonight, and this is really all I want you to take away from this, if you are in this region, which we now know the Storm Prediction Center has that slight risk out for this area, if you are in that region, please just keep the radar up and going and have a way of staying in tune with the risk of strong winds with this setup, because it has that look that I just want to be aware of. Okay, so sorry I spent a little extra time on that, but we need to keep an eye on this. It's critical for rain and for this dry region, and it's critical for the severe storm risk. All right, beyond this, getting into Saturday morning, let's play through the middle of the day on Saturday and get towards Saturday evening. That system rolls through. This is by Saturday night, and then all attention is going to go to the west. So just take a look at this system. I'm focusing over here now. This is now early Saturday morning through mid-morning and through Saturday afternoon and evening. It's cold. It's got enough for snow at elevation here, and it's going to bring rain through the Central Valley of California and into the west. And it's going to be windy, and it's going to be powerful, and it will come out into the midsection of the country. So at this time of year, when you see this much snow, this tells you the depth of a trough. And the deeper they get, the more potent they will be when they eject. So thinking about all of this, remember I said I'm struggling to give you a solid May forecast, and this is one of the reasons why. So much of May favored this high pressure cell. So remember, storms came over the top. They went out like this. We saw ridging over the southeast, and we've been in that kind of look. Maybe the easy way to see it is just to look at the jet stream level anomalous winds. So flows come around like this. We've had a component from the subtropical jet, but systems roll through here, and they get pulled right into this part of the United States. About the only thing that's been missing is a huge ridge over the southeast. It's been showing up at times, but it's not quite the size of some springs that we've had, like 2019, where that ridge was the most prevalent feature in the jet stream. But what this has done is this has allowed, we talked about this earlier in this month, or last month, I guess, for the kind of advection of the Mexico drought to come up at times and really plant itself with the low relative humidity values, some points off by 10 to 15% compared to average right there in central Kansas. So does that continue? And this is the struggle with trying to tell you more about May. I think we have such loose signals that making a prediction beyond the next 2 weeks is not a wise decision for anybody. And I'd like to make the case for that. So here we are. This is this morning, and that is trough number 2. So as you watch that one come in this weekend, by the time we get to Sunday night into Monday morning and it ejects, that is the one we're keeping an eye out on for next week. This would be the Monday severe weather threat getting into the Tuesday in the Wednesday. It's a deep low, and it just sits there and stacks up. In fact, one thing to take note of, by early next week, do you see this close contour here that's blue? That would be the 540 line, suggesting that we've got pretty deep reservoir of cold air here. And we'll take a look at the frost threat in this part of the plains as well. All right, so where does that trough go by May 7, 8, and 9? We start to see this bit more amplified look to the pattern. So this is going to be a warm and dry signal here. As this trough is likely going to go east and deepen, this is where the potential pattern shift is. So when is it? It's May 10, 11, 12. And what's different? Ridging here. You see, that ridge had been prevalent way over here. And if that ridge sat in this area for so long, which it did, the flow was coming into troughs in the west, right? And we were dipping this down and not having a ridge here, or excuse me, a trough. We had a ridge in this area. So I've now watched all week long this pattern evolve, and we need to question what the significance of that pattern is going to be as we play this forward, because one, we have to question how cool it gets. Two, remember earlier this week, that's northwest spring flow, which is a drier signal across places that do need to see some drier air. That is warmth in the west, a place that needs to pick up some wet weather. This is wetter in the east, a place that needs to pick up some wetter weather, right? So this is important, this whole pattern that goes through. But until we get to it, this is the next 10 days. Probability of grabbing an inch of precipitation, very high. Take a look at coastal Washington, Oregon, California, the interior here. Look at Montana. That is the strongest signal for wet weather in Montana, getting into Alberta and Saskatchewan that I've seen in the models in a long time. And the real risk for flooding, sorry, we just got the new model run in here. The real risk for flooding over the next 10 days seems to be stretched out across this region where we've already had extremely wet weather, but we're feeling this in the Mid-South, getting here all the way into parts of the Northeast. The best part about this for me is this is rain. These are good chances of rain coming into these drier parts of the Southeast, getting up toward the Mid-Atlantic. So where is the drier air? Let's go back and have a look at it here. This is the probability of staying under a half inch. And now we've cleared that out. Remember, we had chances here, but now that seems to be gone. All right, with that, let's go through the models. Ready? 5 of them, real quick. Same story from the artificial intelligence. That's the forecast for total precipitation. Here it is from the national blend of models. Here it is from the WPC. These are all 7-day forecast maps. Look at that. And here it is from the European. And here it is from the GFS, version 16. What we're trying to illustrate here is that persistence is right now the name of the game. What happens after 7 days from now is going to be the difference maker. I'll show you those longer range forecasts in just a moment. But first, I want to walk you through the models. Now watch this. I'm going to play this fast. You blur your eyes and watch it. The two models seem in pretty good sync, don't they? I mean, that's impressive to see them with the same systems going forward. So let's just pick this up tonight. Getting in through Saturday and Sunday, watch the deep low come into the west, the stalled out frontal boundary bringing in showers in this area. We're going to reverse this flow in the midsection of the country and open it right back up to the south. And what this means is that Monday, right here, watch for the risk of severe storms. Lingering storms here, but watch for the risk right in this area for severe storms. Then we get into Tuesday. That presses east. We then get into Wednesday. The front lingers, the reinvigorated area in through here, giving us the risk of severe storms. Can you see the low leaving its front and right in through there? We're going to watch another little shortwave sneaker on the backside, giving us that Wednesday risk of severe storms on Wednesday night. Then this low curls up east, delivers rain east. Look at that. And leaves a stalled out frontal boundary somewhere sitting in this area. We talked about it a lot this week, on which we get some heavier precipitation. Now, beyond that, okay, take a look at what the models are trending toward. I think right now the European has the best idea on week 2. And what this means is if we get flow coming up into a ridge that builds into a trough here, the unsettled weather is always east of that trough. Is this our first halfway decent open planting window? Possibly. Why do we keep this wetter? There's still some subtropical component in the jet stream here that's feeding that. But the jet is split west, and that's what's giving us this drier look. So this is playing out quite well given our recent analysis. That's May 10 to May 17. Watch for rapid planting in this area during that time frame. If this manifests itself, watch this trend all week. Remember, you can get this. If you just go to agweather.com, ag-wx.com/national_report. And so I like to stack up all my favorite maps and stuff here. So it's just click on the week 2 precipitation anomalies. You get all 3 of them real quick. All right, from there, let's talk temperatures. Since April 1st, this is what our GDDs look like compared to average. The West is very far behind, especially California, Arizona, parts of Oregon, Washington are way off on the accumulation of heat. Montana, these numbers kind of lie to us. Technically, we're above, but that's because we don't count against it when it's been so cold. But a lot of the rest of the country's had some heat at times, just not been able to take advantage of some drier weather. So this is the frost outlook, and I'm going to tell you, no, this is not a frost. They had a data fallout problem here this morning. In fact, if you'd like to see it, there it is. So no frost there. These are the minimum temperatures over the next 7 days. Let's walk through them. There's Saturday morning, quite cold in through here again, getting us into Sunday morning, chilly morning for a lot of the Midwest, upper Midwest plains. There's Monday morning. That's when the deep trough is now sitting firmly here over the west. We then get into Tuesday morning, maybe the risk of some frost events again, Snake River Valley, and possibly in through this part of Washington, Oregon, California. Out there to Wednesday morning and Thursday morning. We'll take a close look at when this cooler air is going to come in. Max temperatures. Here's today's highs. Getting into Saturday and sorry about that. That's Sunday. Look at that. That's a lot of cold air stinking through here. And by the way, we're looking at a temperature increase from 50 to 80. That's a 30-degree swing in a matter of 3 days. And as we play this forward into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, look at this colder air coming in on the backside of this. Now, a couple of things I want to make sure you remember, all right? If we look over the next 7 days, this is where we're expecting to be accumulating our GDDs, all right? So very low accumulation north because of the cooler air, but heat that's coming down here to the south, we're going to get a lot of them. Day 5 through 10, day 10 through 15, this is when you get split trough. That's the warmth that's finally coming into the western United States. It is also in the European model. So if we take a look, that's day 5 through 10, day 10 through 15. Now, as we start to see this, we may ask some questions like, are we, what's this? Are we looking at a frost risk? So just remember, if you go to AgWeather, so here's the AgWeather website, come over here and let's just pick, pick a place in Minnesota, Albert Lee, right there. So you have to click on the name. It puts its identification number in there, then click submit. And what it's doing is it's hitting my servers. We're backing out all the information and you land on this. Now, there's a lot of stuff for you to look at here, but if you come down to the bottom, click on the 10-day multi-model probability of temperatures. And you'll see each of the models, the ECMWF, the GFS, and the MBM forecasting temperatures. What you want to watch for is if any of these dip you down into a low that gets into this, what I've kind of labeled as the frost zone. So if you are very worried about a frost coming into your area after you've maybe planted and had some emergence, go look at this. It's updated twice a day when we get the new model runs, the 12Z and the the 12Z and the 0Z from all 3 models, and you can keep track of that. You can also go look at my 7-day frost maps anytime you want. That's linked on the National Report site, so please go take advantage of it. Okay, I want to show you one last way to look at frost. This is the probability of getting below 40. And as we play it forward, of course, we know the colder air that's coming in here. So this has already been discussed. What I'm curious about is when we get way out here, there it is, May 10th. There we are, early morning, May 10th. This is now getting out there early morning, May 11th. And the early morning of May 12th. I am looking for the models to show any location that has that chance of getting below 40, simply due to the fact that if you get locally into the mid-30s, you'll have a patchy frost. And what I'm not seeing right now with that broader trough that's going to live in the east, I don't see deep, deep cold air in it. All right, let's start to wrap this thing up. This is the May 7th through June 7th forecast now. And this is why I stressed at the beginning, does persistence win, or is this pattern change that's happening about 10 to 12 days from now really manifest itself? Because the models don't know. Let me show you what I mean. This is the forecast this morning, which is heavily biased toward what's going on in the next 7 days. This was the same forecast that we had, 3 runs ago for the same time period out to June 7th. So I was going to tell you, we're not going to be able to rely on any sort of a May forecast beyond about 10 to 12 days. We shouldn't even try because it's going to paint a more confusing picture than anything else. You say, why? Well, the MJO has collapsed. We now have cooler water showing up here with these surging trade winds. I've watched cooler water continue to maintain itself along the west coast, although not cold, like cold that scares me cold, but cooler water here. And so my question will be, does persistence win the day? In other words, in a week from now, am I not talking about a big switch in the pattern, but instead a return to what we've seen? That could still be really debated and discussed. So we just need to talk about something else, and that means a global outlook. Quite cold throughout Russia, as you can see. Very hot throughout parts of Brazil. Temperatures here averaging 10 to 15 degrees above average. And if you take a look at that global precipitation outlook, this has been kind of a story we've been covering, right? The flooding that's along the Yangtze, very wet throughout Indonesia. Look how wet things are expected to now get here in a large section of eastern Australia. You can take a look at the dry signal that's on a lot of the Safrina, while there's a lot of flooding down in southern Brazil. And the newest update from the satellite estimations have now, I think, captured this better. So we have some places into Rio Grande do Sul, a key state for growing in Brazil, that have had in excess of 500 millimeters of rainfall just in the last 2 weeks, while we've gone much drier to the north of it, and we're expecting it to stay that way. Over these next 10 days, where's the flooding coming back to? Those same regions, Santa Catarina, Rio Grande do Sul, Uruguay, coming out of Paraguay, while a big donut hole here in terms of total precipitation farther to the north. So this is the narrative that we're going to continue just to monitor carefully as we go forward for South America. But that flooding in southern Brazil has got me quite concerned. So I'll stop it there. Thank you all for giving me your attention this week, and we'll try this again next week. I appreciate it. Thanks.